So I just want to say that I'm really happy you are here today because truthfully, I think that there is currently like a little bit of a disconnect in what goes on in the prenatal fitness world and kind of how people are talked to about pregnancy. I think it's really common for people to think, oh, I'm newly pregnant. I need to just take it easy. I need to just kind of like chill and focus on my body. But the way I see it is it really is more of a physical journey than we give ourselves credit for. And even though we have so much excitement to prepare for when it comes to our new baby, and we do so much research, so much planning about baby, I think that you guys deserve that same amount of attention, care, preparation for you and your body and the journey that you're about to go on. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. And I really am like just so happy to see so many of you already joining and thinking that way and prioritizing yourself. It's very cool. So I'm excited for the hour we're gonna have together. I may have told some of you guys this was going to be 30 minutes. It's not going to be 30 minutes. It's going to be probably closer to 60 because I just kept adding things. I was like, but they need to know this and they need to know that. But it's pretty much indicative of my personality when I'm teaching. I'm like, one more rep, but I really mean five. I'm like, this is the last exercise, but it's definitely not. There's just always more I got to share. So hopefully it will all be helpful. And I am going to move through it as quickly and efficiently as we can so that everything's valuable. But let's get to it. So when it comes to exercise and pregnancy, I really feel like there are two kind of ends of the gamut that people run. On one side, a lot of people take the mindset, oh, okay, I'm pregnant, like this is a delicate time, I'm going to pull back. Maybe I should stop doing some of the exercise and some of the activities I used to do because I'm not sure if it's safe, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me right now. And that is kind of one side. It can come from two things. It can just be kind of like, that's how they feel like pregnancy should be handled, like I'm a delicate flower. Or it can also come from fear. I think a lot of times that type of mentality comes from the feeling of, I don't want to do anything to hurt my baby. I don't want to do anything that's going to not benefit me in the long run. And I don't really know what's correct to do. And that's especially understandable if you've had like a long journey to get pregnant or if it was any precarious situations. So I do totally understand and respect that side of things for sure. And then on the other hand, we have people who are like workoutaholics. They love their workouts. They're in class 6 days a week and they don't want to stop doing anything. They want to do soul cycle till the end. They want to keep going and not change a thing. And for some people that actually works. You hear me okay? I think we have a child joining. I love it. Children are welcome, of course. But anyways, guys, so people will sometimes not want to stop exercising, and that works for a little while. But then when they get to that third trimester, they grow and they're so like their belly's getting so big that it becomes difficult to continue their old workouts without modification. And then a lot of people at that point kind of just stop. They're like, well, I only have like 6 or 8 weeks left anyways. I'm just going to pull back. I'm going to stop. And then, of course, postpartum comes and there's necessary rest and everything, but that can be up to 2 months. And then over time, like it can add up to really quite a lot of time without being active. So neither one of these situations is ideal, in my opinion. But the good news is I'm here to tell you that there's a middle ground, and that's what we're going to talk about today, kind of finding that balance of what is appropriate for pregnancy. So the reason I'm so passionate about this is because there's so many benefits that we get from exercise during pregnancy. And the more we understand what these benefits are and what's actually going on physiologically, the more we're going to be able to stay active and continue moving and like really believe in the power of what we're doing. So these are some studied and proven benefits of prenatal exercise that I think are amazing. Decreased risk of gestational diabetes. That's a huge one. It can be a really big problem for a lot of people. Decreased risk of prenatal hypertension, which is basically like high blood pressure, another one that can become really problematic in late pregnancy and leading up to birth. Preparation for the physical demands of labor. A lot of people underestimate what it's going to be like. They're like, oh, I'll think about that when I get to it. But it's a big event. It's a big event. And so we want to prepare for it. And reduce fatigue and improve sleep quality. That's another one that you're going to love when you're in that third trimester and you just want to get a good night's sleep. Exercise can help with that. And then this one I think is really interesting. Lower risk of emergency cesarean section. And that might sound surprising, but it's funny. I've actually really seen this to like match up with what I've observed. The more active people are, the less likelihood of emergency cesarean. Obviously not true across the board. There's so many different scenarios, but if that was an interesting one, that's statistically proven. So, like I said, I think one of the biggest things that we're going to focus on today is how much exercise correlates to preparation for labor. And I'm going to try to change your mindset with this because when I started thinking this way and first heard people talking this way, I was like, light bulb. But basically, childbirth is the hardest workout you're going to do in your entire life. It's the biggest test of physical strength and stamina that you'll face. I'm not saying that to scare you. I just want you to understand the weight of it and really how much of it is in kind of your control when it comes to preparing your body for that big extreme test, right? Like for instance, if someone told you, okay, you have to run a marathon in 9 months, what would you do for those 9 months, right? Would you prepare yourself? Would you train? Would you systematically work your way up to being able to do that big challenge? Or would you kind of just be like, well, I'll pull back a little, kind of see what happens. I don't know if I want to stress about it too much, right? I think that if we knew we were going into something so intimidating and so intense, we would want to prepare for it, right? And I think that that is the mindset we need to take when it comes to pregnancy. We need to train for it and we need to feel ready. And there are so many things that we can do now that really prepare us. I think we've taken, as a society, a little bit of a laissez-faire attitude with pregnancy because it's very common, right? The majority of women in the entire world will do this at some point. But at the same time, we're living in the modern world. We know a lot of tricks and techniques that can make this experience a lot better for you. And I think that that is where we want to live. And you guys are already here today to learn that. So love that for you. But that might sound complicated. You're like, all right, how am I going to take action? How am I going to prepare myself for this marathon? It sounds complicated, but it's actually not as complicated as it is when you understand this one technique we're going to learn today. And it really is I'm not exaggerating. It's one technique that is the basis of everything I teach my clients and everything I work on with them. That's what we're going to learn today. Put it in your bodies. You'll be able to take it with you and take it into all your workouts, your daily life for the rest of your pregnancy and beyond. And I honestly think it's going to be life-changing. But don't take it from me. Take it from my client, Jamie. This is one of my clients I worked with for so long, over 5 years. And she went through 3 pregnancies and 3 C-sections with me, training throughout the entire time. And she was someone who really understood the importance of prepping her body for these major events. And these are her own words: staying active during and after all 3 of my pregnancies was undeniably the reason I've been able to recover from 3 C-sections with full strength. Without properly healing my body from the inside out, I wouldn't be at the place I am today, feeling as though I continue to get stronger every day. And that's just the best testimony because it's not even about me. It's she understands the benefit of movement and specific exercise that is focused on what she's going through. And she really feels like it saved her. She became a fanatic. Once I started working with her, I taught her this technique we're going to learn today. And she was like, oh my God, this is the key. And she felt so much better. She sent all her friends to work with me and learn it too. So that's what we're going to learn. And you can see, even with 3 C-sections, it can help you really recover. So let's figure out what this exercise is. I feel like I've been teasing you so much. But I'm curious. I don't know if I'll even be able to see the chat, but if you have any guesses, does anybody have any guesses if I told you there was one exercise that's going to change your pregnancy and recovery? Do you feel like it might be a core exercise? Do you feel like it might be squats, cardio, walking, hip opening? It could be anything really, right? But I feel like the answer is going to surprise you. Oh, we have a guest. I love a guest. A brave soul. Breathing. Kelly. 360 breathing. Guys, I'm so excited. You're right. I didn't think anyone was going to guess it. It's a breathing technique. Breathing is literally the foundation of all other movement, especially when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum. What part of our body experiences the most change? I'm so proud of you guys, Dominique, Kelly. I'm so proud. You're already there. You're with me. What part of the body experiences the most change during pregnancy? It's obviously our torso, right? Our midsection. That's where the most stretching and changing happens. The ribs, the pelvis. And the major exercise that's going to engage and deal with all those areas is breathing. So pelvic floor physical therapists really agree. If you talk to anybody who's in the know right now, they'll tell you that breathing mechanics are the top trick to maintaining the strength and integrity of your core, your pelvic floor, and your abdominal canister. All right. So, I feel like I was supposed to tell you who I was. Oh, here it is. I didn't tell you who I was. Honestly, it's not that important. I think if you're already here, you know who I am. But I've been doing this work for over almost 10 years, working one-on-one with prenatal and postpartum clients. I have a lot of certifications here. And most importantly, I've worked with a lot of women and gotten to see like the full range of everything. Somehow I missed this slide, but you get the picture. Anyways, let's keep going. So what I was going to say is that this breathing technique incorporates your entire abdominal canister. And if you haven't heard that term, let's introduce it because that one's a little more high level, but I do think it's super, super helpful to learn. So what the heck is the abdominal canister? Seems complicated. I'm going to keep it simple as much as I can for you. Basically, it's a group of 4 muscles that make up the deep core and kind of surround and support and stabilize your trunk. So that's an important thing to note. The function of the abdominal canister is stability. And as you may know already, when you're pregnant, your center of gravity is changing, you're stretching, you're losing control. So stability is super, super important. And that's why we need our abdominal canister. Quick overview of the muscles. I can't see you guys and no one else can see you. So if you want to do this with me, you can use your hands. I feel like it's helpful to be a little bit tactile. But if you take your hands and just kind of rub your belly, front, sides, back, maybe you got a baby in there, you say hello. That is your transverse abdominis muscle. And I want you to feel that because it's actually really big. You can see it shown here as well. It's a big corset-shaped muscle that wraps around the entire spine. Typically, its job is stabilization of the spine. However, during pregnancy, it has a really important job where it actually acts as like a sling to lift and support the weight of the belly when it's trained correctly, right? All right, next we have the multifidi. This is in the back here. If you kind of go to that spot that like always feels terrible, that's your fun little multifidi muscles, and they're always like overworked. They're tiny little muscles that have a big job of stabilizing your spine as well. And so this work that we're going to do is going to help strengthen those, which we really need because most of us feel strain, and then especially with the changes we have during pregnancy, that really gets exacerbated. Next, we got the diaphragm. Love the diaphragm. You may or may not have known that the diaphragm is actually a muscle. I feel like some people think it's an organ, but it is a muscle. And it's shaped like a parachute or a dome. So if you want to make this hand gesture, I know it feels stupid, but like I'm going to be using these a lot because I think it's helpful. And place it at the bottom of your ribs. This is where your diaphragm sits, and it's shaped in this dome shape. So like I said, it's like a parachute. If you grew up in the 90s and you went to gym class, when you had the parachute in class and everyone would like lift the parachute up and run in, that's what happens when that diaphragm contracts. And then when everyone would pull back and stretch it taut, that's what happens when that diaphragm extends. So it actually is on the exhale, it lifts up. And on the inhale, it stretches out and down. All right, if that analogy isn't sitting, don't worry, we're going to do more of that later, but I think it's helpful to picture. And then lastly, we got the pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is on the bottom. It's also shaped like a dome, but kind of the other way, upside down. And believe it or not, it does the same motion as that diaphragm. They work together with the breath that's being pushed down and pushed up. The pelvic floor gets a lot of attention during pregnancy. It's kind of a hot topic, but I think it's also very misunderstood. Like poor pelvic floor, so misunderstood. So we're going to understand a little bit more about the pelvic floor today that goes a lot farther than just Kegels. Okay, so if all that was like really, you're like, I don't do the muscle thing, don't worry. All you really need to know is that your core is a pressure system. All right, so the purpose is controlling the amount of pressure that's inside your core at any given time. What adds pressure to your core? Your breathing, right? So I think of it as a soda can. And if you picture, it's got the top, bottom, sides. And you know how when you have a soda can that's carbonated, it's like just waiting to pop. If you shake it, it's going to explode. That's what it's like when you have a lot of pressure inside your core. So when that can is closed, if you like take a big inhale, you can try it with me, take a big, you feel how much pressure is in there. Everything feels really full, really tight. Then let's say we crack the top and we let that can empty and breathe and open up. That is what happens when we breathe and we allow our breath into the picture. And then suddenly it's more malleable. It can be crushed, it can be shaped, it can be changed. And that's the two extremes of what goes on in our core. So we're managing pressure at all times. Even if you don't know what's happening, it's literally happening right now. Now, this becomes very important in pregnancy because like I said, air, inhaling and exhaling is going to change the pressure inside your core. But what else could really increase or change the pressure inside your abdomen at any given time? So if you think about it from like a physics perspective, when you have the same container, but you put more mass into it, It's creating more pressure. My mom's a scientist, so she'll be proud of me for saying this. What else could go into the core and increase pressure? It's something that is growing, getting a little bigger every day, more mass being put inside. Yes, it's your baby. So that's why it's so important during pregnancy. Right. The growing baby is actually making more pressure in your belly as it grows. Okay. So that can be a problem for some people. And you might already be feeling this, especially if this is not your first pregnancy or if you're a little further along. I hear it all the time. And clients are like, it's just this pressure up into my ribs. My organs are being pushed, or like it's this heavy feeling, like pressure downwards. It's not fun. I know it's not fun. And a lot of that can be caused by anatomical changes, or like the positioning of the baby can have a big effect on that. But also, it has to do with how we manage that pressure, and how the core works to manage that pressure is what is going to affect how much you feel. So, what we got next? Why should we care? I feel like that was a lot of high level anatomy, and you're like, okay, like what's actually at stake here? And this is the part where a lot of people don't find out about their core pressure. They don't understand these changes until it's too late, until they're already seeing the effects. And there are some serious effects that can happen if that pressure is not managed well, when that pressure has nowhere to go. So let's just look at those. Let's get scared for a second. So, first one, I work with this one all the time. You've probably heard of it. It's called diastasis recti. Diastasis recti. I say diastasis. Some people say diastasis. But it's basically like, if you picture that canister, right? Full of pressure, not being managed well, baby's adding. When that pressure pushes forward into the center of the core, it actually causes over time those abdominal muscles to split. And if it's not managed well enough, and that is really encouraged throughout pregnancy, that is exacerbated, that force forward, it can linger, and it can even look like this type of separation postpartum. Doesn't look fun, right? It's not ideal. And you know, it is manageable. I don't like to scare people about diastasis. You are going to experience some extent of stretching throughout your pregnancy, but how much it comes back together has a big like basis in how much you manage that pressure throughout, and how well you train that core. So that's one thing we're trying to prevent here. Another thing is pelvic organ prolapse. This is one your doctor may have actually told you about, because it's pretty serious. It is actually kind of terrible. It is this, when we have that core pressure really building up, it's when that pressure gets pushed downwards and gets sent downwards too much. And it can be caused by just like pressure throughout the pregnancy, sure, but it can also be caused by excessive pushing, strain, like if you're in labor for a really long time, if you are having multiples, or if you've had multiple vaginal births. All of that can cause this. And then also weakness in the pelvic floor to not support all that can cause this. But basically, it's when one or more of the organs in the pelvis slip down from their normal position and bulge into the vagina. It can happen with any of the organs down here. This is the uterus pushing through into the vagina. This is the bladder pushing through into the vagina. And this is the rectum. So, you know, pick your poison. It could be any of those. It's really not fun, but again, it is treatable. I don't want you to think like, oh my God, now I have one more thing to worry about. But again, this is one of the reasons we want to be prepared, right? And we want to do everything we can to prevent it. And those are two extreme examples that are not fun, but then there are also just like other little symptoms that really kind of stink, that you probably heard a lot about. If you know anybody who's postpartum or even in late pregnancy, you might experience this: urinary incontinence, leaking when you don't want to be leaking, lower back pain, pelvic pain, pain with sex, difficulty regaining core strength. All of these are results of mismanaged core pressure. And a lot of these things, unfortunately, we hear them all the time, coming from our friends, coming from us. You might go to your doctor and be like, I'm having this issue. Is that normal? And your doctor will be like, oh, yeah, that's normal. That's totally fine. And you're like, is it though? And so this is where the term comes in that we talk a lot about in this space, which is common but not normal. So these conditions are happening to a lot of women at a very high rate, but that doesn't mean they should be happening, right? That doesn't mean we have to normalize it, and it doesn't mean it has to be your reality. So I believe that those symptoms people are experiencing should not be considered normal, and we should be doing everything we can to prevent them. So that's why we're here. Now, look, I know this is a lot of detail and maybe you didn't want all that detail. So if all this pressure and anatomy talk has you feeling like you're in physics class or anatomy, don't worry, we're going to get to the exercise because all you really need to know is how to do this one simple exercise. But as I told you, I believe in empowering you. Don't like just trust me with all your fitness. I think you guys want to understand what's going on. So I hope that that imagery of what's going on in your body right now was helpful. But let's learn this exercise because I think putting it into your body is going to help a lot. So the exercise that allows you to effectively manage pressure at all times, someone guessed it earlier, Dominique. So excited to see that. I call it umbrella breathing. Okay, so this is the name of this big exercise we're going to learn today, but it's also known as 360-degree breathing. You may have heard of it. If you've heard of it, let me know in the chat because I'm kind of curious how much this is getting out there. This is key. This exercise is big. It's everything. And the reason it's called umbrella breathing or 360-degree breathing is because the movement that happens in your rib cage mimics the opening of an umbrella in all directions, which is a little bit like counterintuitive to the way that we typically breathe. We got a couple chats. Oh, my friends have heard me talk about it. I love it. We're getting the word out. We're getting the word out. All right. So it's amazing because it incorporates the entire abdominal canister at once. The transverse abdominis, the multifidi, the pelvic floor, and the diaphragm. Remember those guys? So it's really the best way to incorporate everything at once. Dominique is happy to hear what it means. Yeah, it's complicated. So like we do have to go into this breakdown. I feel like it can be a buzzword and people are like, just do your umbrella breaths. And you're like, I don't know what that is. We're gonna learn. We're gonna learn. Oh wait, I want to show you. I love this GIF. GIF or GIF? I think it's GIF. My friends always yell at me because I say the wrong one. Now I'm really confused. GIF? I think it's GIF. But I love this because it shows you what I was showing you before with my hands, right? That stretch and expansion on the inhale and that lift on the exhale. Jif, like the peanut butter. Thank you. I can't get that one. So we're going to come back to that as we learn it in our body. But I think like how cool is it to see how everything works? It's such a well-designed machine that's going on with every breath we take. I want to emphasize, like I was saying, this is down on the inhale and up on the exhale. Down on the inhale, up on the exhale. I say that so many times because it is not what you want to do. I'm going to teach it to you right now, and you're going to be like, I don't want to do that. 9 times out of 10, when I tell someone to take an inhale, they go like this, and their chest lifts and their shoulders lift and their neck gets really tight and everything goes up. What we're going to do today is inhale down, because what happens when all that tension is going up? Who's not showing up to the party? Mr. Pelvic floor, Mr. Low belly, Mr. Low back, all those muscles that we just learned need to be involved in breathing are getting bypassed when we breathe up. Not to mention it has terrible effects for your nervous system and it makes you in a state of fight or flight all the time, which we don't need in our already stressful society. But anyways, that's why we're breathing down. We want that diaphragm to contract down and that pelvic floor to release down on the inhale and up on the exhale. We're going to try it together in a second, but I just want to really point that out because your body is not going to want to do that, and that's okay. It's normal to not want to do that. All right, so let's get ready to try it. Before we do it together, I just wanted to show you this video because I feel like it's a little easier for you to see me in these clothes in bright light. But yeah, I'm showing my hand is the pelvic floor, releasing on the inhale, lifting on the exhale. Down and out, letting the belly hang on the inhale, and then lifting up and zipping up on the exhale. Releasing on the inhale, pressing down, exhale lifts up. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And by the end, you end up with all that core tension because you've exhaled, you've tightened, everything has space to move and work and contract. And that's how it makes that core stronger. All right, so we're going to break it down into 2 parts. Here's the learning part where we get into a little bit of movement. So you can stay seated for sure, but I recommend either one, staying seated where you are and just getting into more of like an upright position. I'm also going to try to move my camera so you can see more of my torso. 2, you could also do it standing. You could even do it laying down if you really want, but I feel like usually seated is sufficient. And we're going to learn this together in 2 parts. So we are going to learn the inhale first, and then we're going to learn the exhale because it's not easy. I know I said everything's going to come down to one exercise, but it's like the most complicated exercise in the world. So don't stress it. It takes a little time to figure this out in your body. It's something that takes practice, but eventually becomes second nature. All right, so hopefully we're all set up. Let's do this. we're going to start with the inhale. Okay. So we're going to learn the inhale in 3 parts. Like I said, and I have these arrows to show us, the inhale goes top to bottom. So we're going to start at the top with our ribs. Then we're going to fill our belly, sides, and back. And lastly, we're going to release that pelvic floor. So let's learn those 3 parts. First is the ribs. This is the key, right? This is that umbrella opening feeling, which is harder to do than you might think. So I want you to try this. Bring your hands to the side of the rib cage. Bring your fingers to the front of the ribs, your hands to the side, and your thumbs to the back of the ribs. And now maybe take a second to look at my little box so you can see what I'm doing here. As I inhale, I let those ribs move away from center, inflating like a balloon in all directions, and then I let them drop back down. So try that in your body. You should be able to feel with those hands that you're pressing the hands out to the side on the inhale, and you even feel movement in those thumbs. That's tricky. When I started doing this, I was not feeling movement in my thumbs. It's definitely hard if you haven't ever been breathing this way and you have tension. But just starting to build awareness is the first step. So see if you can feel some movement in your thumbs as you do this. Nice. All right. So hopefully we're getting those ribs moving a little bit. We're going to keep working on it. Don't stress if it's not happening yet. That's part 1 of the inhale. Then we start to move down. We're going to fill the belly, sides, and back. Now, this is actually easier if you're pregnant, because if you've got a baby, you're just going to let that belly hang. Just let it all go. On that inhale, fill up with air, let everything relax, feel like you're breathing into the sides. I always say this part is like filling up a pool float. You know how when you fill a pool float, sometimes it has like multiple compartments, and you fill one, and then you fill the other, and then you fill the other. That's how I think of the inhale. First compartment is our ribs. We fill them up as much as we can. Once they're full, we move on. We fill the belly, sides, and back. Inhale, expand, release, expand, release. That's 2. Last part is we let that pelvic floor go. We're going to let it release down and out. Now, whether you've ever connected to your pelvic floor or not, it can be tricky to release that pelvic floor. It's like it just loves to hold tension. So that's why we're doing this. We need that girl to let go. Imagery is helpful here. So I like to picture my pelvic floor when I inhale, like not pushing down, because we don't need to add any more pressure, but rather just like spreading and releasing. I think of like a flower opening, or like a balloon filling and expanding. And it's that breath coming into the body, coming into the pelvis, that allows it to stretch and expand, right? And I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but I'm a modern dancer, so I am a little woo-woo. But I think you need imagery, because you can't actually see what's happening on me, and you can't see what's happening on you. You just got to hope that it's happening. So think of that imagery. You got to inhale and expand. All right. Yes, we got through the inhale. Let's put it all together. Let's just try just the inhale. We have 3 parts: ribs, belly, pelvic floor. Here we go. Inhale into the ribs, all directions. Inhale into the belly, sides, and back. Release that pelvic floor at the end, and just let it go. Beautiful. All right, we filled up that pool float. Now let's deflate it. Let's work on that exhale. All right, so like I said, if you picture that like flower opening on the inhale, now we are going to initiate with the bottom, with the pelvic floor on our exhale. So like we see with this arrow, it's going bottom to top. So inhale went top to bottom. Now we go bottom to top. First thing that happens is the pelvic floor lifts. We inhaled to spread. Now we're going to contract and lift. And if you have done Kegels in the past, I want you to pretend you've never done them, because those guys aren't helpful. Most Kegels, like if you picture this as like your vagina, your pelvic floor, it's like a squeezing, constricting feeling. And we don't want that, actually, because that's just going to cause that pelvic floor to lock up and tighten up and not be able to release. I want you instead to think of a lifting feeling. So not a squeeze, but just like the opposite of what we did with the release. We want to lift. It's like people say it's like you're picking up a blueberry, or it's like you're pitching a tent with your pelvic floor. These images are where I'm starting to lose people. I know, but they work. And I also feel like when I do the hand gesture, it looks like a jellyfish. So you can think of that too. Inhale, release, exhale, jellyfish goes up. Look, it works for me. But I hope it works for you, because I can't see your pelvic floor. So that's the start of the exhale. Very first thing that happens is pelvic floor lifts. Then from there, this next part may even be the easiest part, because I think we've all done this. You know that feeling when you're trying to get into a pair of jeans that you haven't worn in a while? A little too real. This just happened to me. And you're like, oh, I gotta get in there. That's kind of the idea that we're going for here. We're going to engage that belly up and in from the bottom to the top. So we're going to zip from the base of the pubic bone all the way up to the top there. All right. And again, when you're pregnant, it's actually a little bit easier because what you're going to think of when you're pregnant and you have a belly out there is hugging the baby up and into the spine. And ideally, especially if you've been working on this, I should be able to see that baby moving up and in and that belly kind of shrinking in towards the spine. I'm going to show you a video of it on a pregnant belly in a minute. That'll be helpful to see, but that's what it should look like. And then the last part of that exhale, yeah, releasing the pelvic floor is so tricky. Yes, Dominique, like when you're breathing into your ribs for the doctor, for sure. I was actually going to ask if anybody felt like there was one part that was hard, but I think that releasing the pelvic floor is truly one of the hardest things. It's not easy, especially if you're a tense person or if you exercise a lot without doing this work. That pelvic floor gets tight, tight, tight over time, and it can make it really difficult. A lot of people think they have a weak pelvic floor, but it's actually more common to have an overly tight pelvic floor, especially in today's world with all the stress we have. Our pelvic floor responds a lot to the stress we're feeling in our body. Just like when you clench your jaw, pelvic floor does the same thing. Okay, that was a little side note. So let's put those together. I think you get the idea. That inhale we got, and then the exhale as a reminder. First thing that happens is the pelvic floor lifts. Then it keeps lifting throughout that exhale. We hug belly in and we zip it up. It goes bottom to top. Hug in low belly first, then middle, then upper, and then the ribs drop back down, which usually happens pretty naturally. All right, guys, so let's try like 3 breaths together. I'm going to cue you the whole time because there's like a million and one things to think about the whole time. But let's just try 3 big inhales and exhales, and then we'll check back in the chat and see how we're feeling. So hands come to the sides, front and back of the ribs, and we start with that inhale. Breathing into the ribs first, then the belly, then the base of the pelvis. As much air as you can take in. The exhale starts with that pelvic floor lift, and then we lift low belly, middle, upper, and let those ribs drop. Good. We're going to do 2 more, but I just want to add one more thing. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, always. You don't want to close that glottis. You don't want to close that airway by breathing out through the nose. You always want to breathe out through the mouth. Even better if you add a little sound, because that can help temper the pace of the breathing. So let's try that for the last 2. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Inhale into the ribs, belly, base of pelvis. Exhale, bottom to top, low, middle, high. Hard for me to do both while I'm teaching it. Inhale, ribs, belly, pelvic floor. Exhale, pelvic floor, low, middle, high. Amazing, guys. All right. Sound off in the chat. Let me know how that felt. I want to know if it feels different from how you've engaged the core in the past. If you feel any more connection to your pelvic floor, if any of it felt harder, like Erin was saying that it's hard to release the pelvic floor, which I totally agree. I think most people struggle with that, and especially when you're first getting started with this. Yeah, I need to practice, and it takes a lot of practice. It really does. It's not something that happens overnight at all. Yeah, really hard to release the pelvic floor. I agree, Christina. And this is something that I have videos on in my platform because it is really, it takes time. And sometimes you actually have to get in there with some manual therapy, some stretches, different positions help you release. I encourage everybody to try, if the release of the pelvic floor felt hard, after we're done here or right now, you can do whatever you want. Try laying on your back and doing it, because the pelvic floor can be the most relaxed when you're laying flat on your back. And you might find that release a little easier. Actually, sometimes seated can be harder for that breath, but I just feel like it helps you learn the top to bottom thing. Yeah, struggling with the engagement as well. Exhale felt harder. Yeah, and I actually feel like the exhale really takes time to learn too. Another common issue is a lot of people go to grip their upper abs, because in our world, we're so used to doing crunches for our core work, and that's all we know. But here, we're actually not using the crunch muscles, the rectus abdominis muscles at all. We're just using that deep core, which is a thinner muscle, so it can be a little harder to find. And sometimes you might feel like, am I doing anything? But that's just because the muscle has not built that strength yet. And as it gets stronger, you're going to feel more of a contraction, if that makes sense. Thank you for chiming in, guys. Now, I promised you that this was also the best exercise for your pelvic floor, and you can see how we incorporated it, but I just want to quickly explain why I'm saying that. So, the pelvic floor gets really stressed during pregnancy. I already told you she's a stressed out girl. Typically, a lot of us are feeling that now, right? How difficult it is to release, especially if you're pregnant, especially later in your pregnancy. There are so many factors that make it even in a worse off position. We have the weight of the baby sitting on that pelvic floor. You can see in this image, it's like a bowling ball just sitting on that pelvic floor all the time. The pelvic floor is like, ah. Then we have hormones like relaxin. If you don't know what relaxin is, it's what allows your ligaments and muscles and joints to stretch so that the baby can come through, but basically just wreaks havoc on the rest of the body. It makes the muscles a lot less tense, a little bit more difficult to engage. And the expansion of the pelvis, not everybody knows this, but the bones of the pelvis actually widen and expand for a lot of women during pregnancy. So if you imagine that opening, it's going to keep pulling and stretching on the pelvic floor that's already stressed. And then, as I said before, the function of that pelvic floor is stabilization of the spine and pelvis. So with all that extra weight and all that change, that just gets harder. So we need the pelvic floor to be strong during pregnancy. The demands and what we expect of it are way higher than in our typical life, right? However, there's a flip side, because if we just needed it to be strong, then we would just kegel, kegel, kegel all day and we'd be fine, right? But when we give birth vaginally, we need the baby to be able to pass easily through the pelvis, meaning the pelvic floor can't be too tight or it won't be able to stretch and move out of the way. Like we don't want a wall just locked and stuck, right? Like that is not going to help us. And I actually do believe that that causes a lot of issues. I know a lot of women have trouble dilating, having trouble getting to that end range where baby is moving through like the last station of the pelvis. And if that pelvic floor is not releasing and getting out of the way, then we have an issue. And all that tightness that we're holding in there is not going to help our case. Okay. One other little known fact is that the pelvic floor does not push the baby out. That's not why we want the pelvic floor strong during pregnancy. The uterus actually does all the job of pushing the baby out. It's an amazing mechanism. It knows what to do. Pelvic floor just needs to get out of the way. All right. So we need that pelvic floor to be able to stretch and release. And that's why we work on that stretching in that inhale. Okay. And then postpartum, why does this breath help our pelvic floor? Because it's not just for pregnancy, it's the best exercise for recovery as well. Postpartum, our pelvic floor is overstretched, weakened, and it often tightens up from all the stress. So just like doing worse than ever, really. And that's not ideal. So we need to restore tension, especially if you had a vaginal birth. It really got stretched out of the way. But even if you didn't, if you had a C-section, you're not unscathed because you had 9, really 10 months of all those effects we just described. So we need to get that tension back and we need to learn how to restore balance to that muscle. I want to read Tyler's comment. I never thought about it like that, but tight floor definitely contributed to long labor. Yeah, I've seen it a lot. I was just talking to someone about this who it happened to. It's at that end stage where we're trying to get baby through what we call the pelvic outlet. But we'll get into that. We can also talk about that in the Q&A. So as you can see, remember this lovely GIF? As you can see, the pelvic floor is both contracting and releasing, stretching with each breath. And that's why tying it together, this is the best exercise for your pregnancy and postpartum. Okay. But don't believe me on this. Again, I have proof to back it up. I want to show you some client examples of people who implemented this breath successfully and it really helped them out. So this is my client, Allie. She was diligent with her breath work throughout the entire pregnancy. She trained with me until the week she gave birth. This was her first pregnancy. And I want you to see her doing the breath because I think it's very cool to watch it on a pregnant belly. So look closely because it's a little subtle, but you'll see the video plays on a loop. And when it goes back to the beginning, you'll see how much she engaged. But she's going to inhale and let that belly relax. And then as she exhales, she's going to lift that belly up and in. And as the exhale continues, it lifts more and more. That's gorgeous. Beautiful. Yeah, you can really see the difference when it pops back, right? So she's hugging in, lifting in, and like I said, strengthening that sling. That's gorgeous. That sling of muscles, that transverse abdominis. And that is going to help prevent that back pain, that strain on the pelvic floor, because it's not all on the pelvic floor. It's not all on the back muscles to support the weight of the belly. She's giving that resistance back by strengthening her transverse abdominis. And then here she is in one of our first sessions back postpartum. I genuinely, like, whenever I see people first postpartum, I'm like getting in there, feeling around. I'm like, all right, let's see what happened. And her core was so strong. It was amazing. I was like, girl, did you have a baby? And she was like 7, 8 weeks postpartum. I was like, damn. So here's her working with that
Inhale,
same breath exercise
exhale,
in our postpartum
push.
work. You can hear her beautiful exhale,
Inhale, exhale,
me saying inhale,
push.
exhale, my two favorite words. So I really believe that because she prioritized it throughout her pregnancy, she was practicing this on her own and with me, she was able to have that recovery, right? But at the same time, I will say it was her first pregnancy. So I don't want you to think that's a fluke. This is my client, Satara, who was on her third pregnancy when we started working together and was preparing for her third C-section. And as you go through multiple pregnancies, we have muscle memory. So the body kind of remembers. And I think it starts to stretch a lot more easily in those second and third pregnancies. That's why a lot of people feel like they show earlier in their second and third pregnancies, or they just kind of like feel further along than they are when they're on their second or third. But here you can see us. She is pregnant, pretty close to the end, I believe, at this point, and we're working on rib cage mobility because, again, as that belly gets so full, we got a lot of pressure down there. We want to be able to breathe into that upper back, and mobilizing the ribs allows us to do that. And then here she is postpartum. We started slow, of course, getting back into it. I will admit that the recovery process for a C-section is definitely different. We started pretty slow and it took a little bit of time to get things back. But within a few months, she was looking strong, feeling great. And she told me that she felt like it was her best recovery because she really prioritized it. Here's her doing some high plank taps, looking really awesome. Love that. And then quickly, I skipped over this slide, but I just want to go back to it because you know the breath, right? I just taught you this exercise and I'm like, this is your baby now. But how do we actually apply it, right? Like as a standalone exercise, or do we incorporate it? So a few ways to apply it in your workouts in core training. I always start with the breathing. So like before I do any core work with pregnant clients, we sit there and we focus on that breathing, doing like 10 breaths, just finding that connection. And then everything you add on from there, every movement is coordinated with an inhale or an exhale. And that first exhale, that tightening of the core, is the basis of your core contraction. So you can't do anything else until you go from there. I always say the exhale is like a seatbelt. It's like you want to make sure you're stable. You want to make sure you're locked in and secure. So you inhale, exhale, go. So if I was doing like a toe tap or something, take off my fuzzy sock, inhale, exhale, go. All right, it's terrible demonstration, but you get the idea. Whatever you're doing, you want to have that exhale ready for you first so that you're already stable before you start. That way we're using the right muscles to stabilize, not those poor little multifidi. Habit building. The reason we practice this is because we don't want to do it just in isolation. I don't want you to doing 5 of these breaths a day and then forget about it. The cool thing is our body is smart. The more we practice it in this breathing technique, the more our body is going to adapt and start to just actually naturally breathe like that. So that throughout every day, as you're working, every inhale you take, every exhale you take, your pelvic floor is involved, your deep core is involved, and it's going to slowly release that tension from the neck and shoulders and all that stress and bring it back down so that our core is like really a part of our daily life. Also, when it comes to daily life, being a mom is a super strenuous activity. If you've ever lifted a car seat or lifted a child who's 3, and like it's a lot of work. And I think that that's a reason that a lot of moms have back pain and other injuries. But if we implement this breath, again, it can act as like a seatbelt for us. I always say the inhale, exhale, go, or I say exhale on the effort. If you're about to bend over and lift your child up, you're going to inhale to prepare and then use that exhale to make sure your core has come to the party. Make sure your pelvic floor is lifting and we're using the right muscles to do those things. And that's part of the way it reduces back pain. As I just talked about, that sling it creates for the belly in late pregnancy is going to seriously reduce back pain. And then postpartum as well. I didn't really mention this, but postpartum, think about that pressure canister again, right? High pressure towards the end of pregnancy, high pressure in one canister. And then what happens? Everything comes out. Baby, placenta, amniotic fluid, it's all coming out of there, right? And then we're left with the same canister because it's not just going to snap right back. I hate to tell you, but nothing in it. So that becomes a low pressure scenario. It's the same canister with nothing in it. Now we need to restore tension and shrink that canister back down to size so that we have a normal tension, normal pressure scenario again, if that makes sense. So, all of that is going to help you stabilize and reduce back pain, reduce injury in your postpartum recovery. I hope you guys are still with me. Probably are like, this is like science, but it's good. But, anyways, guys, I just want to talk about how can you take this and run with it, right? How can you make this part of your routine? Still with me, thank you. So I really believe the best way to do it is daily. And I always say also, if you say you're going to do it daily, you'll do it like 4 times a week, maybe. So just shoot for daily. And with my program, I have like an online platform that walks you through all of this if you're interested in continuing your studies. But I just want you to see how I break down the workouts. I recommend 3 strength workouts a week with core focus. So you're doing this breath at least 3 times a week. And then we have a whole dedicated core video every week to really hone our attention in. And then there's a cardio for anybody who wants it. It's optional. But I really believe like 5 times a week is ideal. 3 or 4 is good too, but practicing randomly won't cut it. And if that sounds like so intimidating, you're like 5 times a week, if you have other kids and stuff, I want you to think of it differently because I don't believe you have to do a whole hour workout to see the effects. That's not what I'm about here. If you see here my timestamps, my workouts are 27 minutes, 11:52, 16:27, and I promise you they're effective. I don't think it needs to be killing yourself with an hour-long workout every time. I'd rather see you putting in the actual beneficial work, like focusing on this breath work and your strength every day, if you could, versus doing like 3 full hours 3 times a week. But anyways, if you felt like this was like starting to click for you and you want to go deeper, I also just want you to know I have more videos on this on the platform because I'll admit, sometimes when I teach these workshops, I feel a little manic. I'm like really excited to get it all out there, but it's dense, right? It's dense stuff. And I think it does take practice to get it into your body. So this was kind of like unlocking, opening that step. But I have a whole video series that truthfully maybe even explains it more clearly than I did today because I was like trying to get so much out at once. But we go through what is the pelvic floor, how to engage the pelvic floor, what is the deep core, how to do the umbrella breath. And I think that could help you kind of like circle back, tie things up, and make sure it's really ingrained before you move on completely. I also want to talk about some barriers to exercise because this is something that is important to me. I actually just read a really, really interesting study about barriers to exercise that women face, and particularly mothers and people who have higher responsibility in the home, higher constraints on their time and caregiving responsibilities. So, if any of that resonates, I get you. Like, I'm not here saying you need to be doing 5 workouts a week and not understanding the constraints because that's very real. And it's something that I think women in particular face. But here are just some ways I recommend kind of handling these barriers because I want you guys to be able to be getting these benefits and moving. Time, like I said, workout does not have to be an hour to be effective. My workouts are 30 minutes or less, all of them. I think that you can get a lot done in 30 minutes. You don't need to be spending an hour at the gym, let me tell you that. Access. A lot of people don't have the ability to leave the house and go to a class or go to a gym membership. That's okay. There are workouts you can do at home. You can do my program at home. All you need is dumbbells and like a mat, and you're good to go. You can do stuff with body weight. Anything is really better than nothing. So don't let like those barriers stop you because I really, really believe anything's better than nothing. Maybe you don't enjoy exercise. Not everybody does. That's okay, but like find what makes it enjoyable for you. For me, it's music. I hate working out without music. I literally can't do it. And if you've ever worked with me, you know I'm obsessed with throwbacks. So most of my playlists are like 2000s, 90s throwbacks, and that really gets me through. And I can't do a workout without it. So on the Hermove platform, you can choose to play it or not, but I will play it because it helps a lot. And then other stuff too, you can even find a friend who will want to join you. Connect to your sense of purpose. I know a lot of clients who say that they don't like working out, but they're doing it because they know it's going to help the health of their baby and themselves through pregnancy. So sometimes it's like that motivation that gets you going too. Accountability, if you're not the type to self-motivate, that is why I like made my program be very clear how many workouts you're supposed to do each week. Because like I don't know about you guys, but I hate when you log on to a library and you're like, what am I supposed to do? What video should I do today? And then you spend so much, it's like picking a Netflix show. You spend so much time picking, you're like, I don't even want to do this anymore. And also I feel like, if you're picking a random prenatal workout, you don't know if it's going to be appropriate for you. So with something that's specified, like my platform, at least you know that you're getting exactly what you need at that point. Here's some testimonials from some people who have done this work and really implemented the breath work. Because again, I feel like the more you realize that it actually makes a difference and see the tangible change, the better off you're going to be. It's going to motivate you to do it, I hope. But Ginny was a first-time mom who did my platform, and she said she loved that the classes were specifically designated towards prenatal and tailored towards each trimester, and it allowed her to feel safe while participating and not spend the entire class worrying about whether it'll hurt her baby or separate the abs. And like we've talked about before, there's so much fear that goes into prenatal workouts. And anytime you go into a workout that you don't know if it's for prenatal, you spend half the time just like worrying and wondering what you should be doing differently. So I really don't want people to have to deal with that mental stress. It's not worth it. Ellen was pregnant with twins when she did my platform, which is cool. And she was saying that it's very solid info. She's glad to have it explained so well. She would have had no idea. Again, like most people aren't taught this. And she was doing CrossFit while doing my platform, which I thought was really cool because that's what she had been doing before. So I thought that was amazing that she was able to keep it up, and it gave her more confidence in the things she was doing at CrossFit, especially the breathing and the pelvic floor. So that's what I want for you guys too. If you have a routine that is already working for you and you'd like to keep it up, you can take this information and run with it. You can apply it to other workouts and keep it going. Corinne was on her second pregnancy and her recovery was going so well. She did the whole prenatal program and she had no prolapse, no pelvic floor issues, and no diastasis. And she had all three with her first pregnancy. So all three of those risks that we talked about before, she saw mitigated because of how much she dedicated to the program. So love that for her. Like, go Corinne, go off. All right, I know we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you too long. So we're going to get to the Q&A in just a second. So start prepping those questions. Oh, I love it. Tyler's offering to be your accountability buddy. I honestly think that helps so much. I have people who do the platform and they text me every time they finish a workout. They're like, I just did full body strength number 5. I'm like, yeah, you did. Keep it up. So if you want to text me, you can, or if you want to find a buddy to do it with, accountability, it's everything. But anyways, let's finish this up so that I can hear your questions. I've got like 2 more slides. But yeah, I just want you guys to know that this is available for you. No pressure, obviously, but I really do believe it's the best option for someone who's pregnant and in your situation. I can't advise like just going off and doing random workouts and trying to modify for yourself, because as someone who's been doing this for a long time, it's complicated stuff, right? And it can be hard to know what you should and shouldn't be doing. And one of the other things that bugs me is like, I don't want people just feeling like they have to pull things out. Like, I guess I can't do planks anymore. I guess I can't do crunches anymore. I want you to know what you should be adding in that's actually going to benefit you. So that's what we focus on. It doesn't get to be less and less stuff as the program goes on and as you get closer to birth. It actually becomes more and more appropriate for what you're going through, which I think is needed. I think everyone deserves that. Some of the features that are on there, besides just the workouts, we have interviews with other women's health experts. So basics of prenatal nutrition with Allie Manger. I have another nutrition talk with Amanda, who's on here today. I have a physical therapy, pelvic floor physical therapy breakdown with my friend, Dr. Alyssa. We talk about acupuncture. And these are just ways to kind of like open your mind to other modalities that can be really helpful. I offer one-on-one consultations for every single person who signs up. I give you 1 free consultation because literally, as you can tell, I'm like way too passionate about this stuff. So I want to make sure that you are getting the most out of it. And again, everybody's different. So I want to hear your history and like help you work through any personal problems that you might have. And then even at the end of pregnancy, like I said, it gets more specific as we go. We do seated workouts. Doesn't that sound nice? Full body stretches, how to deal with pelvic pain, how to prep for birth, all that jazz, so that like it really still feels appropriate by the end. And then it takes you right into postpartum too. We were mainly focused on pregnancy today, but postpartum, whole other beast. But you'll be prepared for it when you get there, I promise. But I have whole sections on the stuff we discussed today: pelvic prolapse, diastasis, C-section. And then I have a 10-week program that helps you systematically rebuild. So we start as early as 4 to 6 weeks postpartum. I believe you can start earlier than the 6-week checkup. Controversial point of view. Feel free to ask me about it. But we reconnect to the body, we rebuild your core, and we regain full body strength. And I really planned it like super meticulously so that by the end of 10 weeks, you're feeling a lot better. And people have been loving that. So that's cool. Anyways, that's the end of my spiel, guys. If you want to try the platform, it's literally no pressure. You have 2 free weeks in which if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. But I also wanted to give you a special thank you for joining today. So if you would like to try it out, I'm also giving you 20% off your first month or quarter. So the monthly rate is typically $29. It will only be $23 for your first month. And quarterly is an even better deal at $25 typically for the 3 months. So it's like $25 a month, $20 a month if you do this deal. So you're going to get that code in your email. And if you want to try it, I really do recommend giving it a go because I don't think there's anything else that's going to help you implement this so consistently. And look, if it's not your gym, you don't have to stick with it. But I recommend, if I were you, sign up tonight when you get the email, because I'm this way. I would forget all about it and then like move on with my life and then be like, oh yeah, the umbrella breath when I'm like about to give birth. So sign up tonight, try a workout tomorrow or over the weekend or whatever, and just like get going and see if you jive with it, you know, but don't let too much time pass. Also to emphasize that we made a little rule. The 20% off is only until Friday at midnight because I figure we might need a little kick. So, all right, that's the end of the presentation.